Folks, we got some breaking news to talk about here today involving the Florida Panthers and the Ottawa Senators making a huge trade with Vladimir Tarasenko. And you're not going to believe the trade price here because it is looking like an absolute steal for the Florida Panthers, and they somehow make their team even better. But what are the trade details between the Sens and the Panthers? How good of a fit is Vladimir Tarasenko for Florida this year? And how far could the Panthers go in the playoffs this season with Tarasenko at the helm? Well, make sure you watch till the end because we're going to be breaking down every little part of this trade. And hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey and trade rumor content as we lead up to the deadline this week. Now, Vladimir Tarasenko was a player that initially I didn't really know was going to be dealt in the first place. He had a full no-move clause, and we heard some rumors about him maybe even wanting to stay with the Senators after this season. But those rumors have been seemingly flushed away as he's been dealt almost immediately to the Florida Panthers days before the deadline. And folks, the trade package is pretty nuts. Now, we're going to get into all the details in a second, but first, let's talk about today's sponsor in BetUS.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer, a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
And for you guys that are new as well, if you go in the description and sign up to BetUS, you'll get an 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits, up to $2,500. It'll get you way ahead of the pack and already winning big. I'm actually going to go for a couple bets tonight. I first got Detroit plus 165 versus Colorado. They got pretty good odds there, and they've still been pretty hot of late, even though they lost the last couple of games. I also got Anaheim versus the Sens. I don't know why I'm predicting this. I just feel like I have a little bit feeling towards the Ducks tonight, especially with Tarasenko out of the lineup for Ottawa. They might be a little bit discombobulated. I'm putting 20 down to win $112. And if you want to win big, sign up to BetUS today to get 24-hour customer service as well as 24-hour customer payouts. BetUS is the place to be in both the US and Canada, and thank you so much to BetUS for sponsoring today's video. Now let's talk about this Vladimir Tarasenko deal, something that kind of came out of nowhere. We were talking about Tarasenko as a potential trade option, but this is a guy that we could see as a really big add for this Florida Panthers team, and one heck of a good one too. With the price that Florida paid, it's looking like an absolute steal here, folks. It is kind of surprising just how much Florida stole from him, and we'll get into the trade package in a second, but considering what Tarasenko still is at this point, he's a player that is going to be an electrifying piece to this Panthers offense. You can see over the past few years, he was a great addition for the Rangers at the deadline, and being signed by Ottawa in a new system, he didn't really show many growing pains. In 57 games, he had 17 goals, 24 assists, 41 points. He was probably up there with Giroux as maybe one of the only players playing up to or surpassing expectations, maybe Giroux and Joseph. That's pretty much it on the Sens, but Tarasenko was still great on the rush, still great in that goal scoring department, and was still great on offense for the Sens team, and it was extremely valuable to see. I was kind of hoping that the Ottawa Senators could find a way to re-sign him past this year because I thought he was a pretty valuable piece in that room. But for the Florida Panthers, they're getting an excellent middle sixer here that will bring some great offense when they need it. Now, when this trade was first starting to get reported, Andy Strickland came out and said 2 mid-round picks for Tarasenko, which honestly was surprising to me. I didn't know if Ottawa would get a first rounder, but I kind of just assumed that a second rounder would at least be a part of a Tarasenko deal, but I guess not. And then Pierre LeBrun comes in with the official trade details with Tarasenko. Ottawa retains 50% on the deal with Florida. Going to Ottawa is a 2024 fourth rounder, which becomes a 2026 third rounder if the Panthers win the cup, and a 2025 third round pick. Now, I do like the bet for Ottawa having a condition here if the Panthers win the cup because, I mean, right now, Florida might be the leading contender out of anybody, but still the best case scenario would be a third rounder in 2026 and a third rounder in 2025. Kind of sucky that the best case scenario is that a third rounder is 3 years ahead of time. Especially when you consider the Florida Panthers have their second rounder next year, they have their third rounder this year. I feel like those picks could have been more in play, but we'll get into it in a second just how little leverage Ottawa probably had here. But no matter what, it is a win here for the Florida Panthers. Adding a player of the caliber of Tarasenko for at worst a couple of thirds, especially with the 50% retention, that is the biggest part of this trade for sure in Tarasenko's end. He was making $5 million with the Sens. That puts him down to 2.5. And the fact that at worst they give him a couple thirds for Tarasenko, 50% retained. What a deal by Bill Zito, man. And it's especially important considering Florida's cap space. Right now, with $5.7 million to work with, you'll have Tarasenko eating almost half of that, but if he had no salary retention, it would be pretty much gone. You wouldn't be able to make almost any other moves. And for the Florida Panthers, they'll have a lot more options here to add another piece if they want. We heard some rumors about them potentially going after Max Pacioretty. Well, they'd have the option to go after him and not even have to retain any salary. Like we talked about in the Chris Tanev to Dallas deal, it opens up the possibilities of even more additions. And for this Florida Panthers team, I think there are ways to go after it. We talked about in the trade predictions video, and I still think a player like Adam Henrique is a fantastic fit. But if they wanted to go after a Henrique, 50% retain, if they want to go after a defenseman, if they want to do any of these things, they'd have the flexibility to do so. And that to me is the most important thing, as well as still having, again, their third rounder this year, they're a second rounder in 2025, they're a second rounder in 2026. They still have so much leverage to make a deal work. As of right now, it looks like Daily Faceoff is putting him on the left wing. Now, he has played right wing this year for the Sens, so I'm not sure how that fit would necessarily work, and it's kind of a reason why I didn't predict a player of the caliber of a Tarasenko to go to Florida, at least as a pure top 6 guy, because I thought that was pretty much locked in. But for the Florida Panthers, they get even more depth here. You can put a player like a Lester Ryan and have Cousins back down on the fourth line. You can continue to have that balance on the wings, and if he does play left wing, it's perfect. If he's on the right wing, it might create other issues, but I think for Florida, they'll be okay in the end. Having a Tarasenko is going to be electric, and you just look at that top 9. I mean, it's incredible. Maybe Edo Luistolainen is their worst player in the top 9. You'll take that. And that top 6, him with Barkov or Reinhart, whatever you want to do, there's so many options here for the Florida Panthers that have just been opened up because of this trade. Now, there are going to be people disappointed with the trade return in the end for Ottawa, and I completely get it. It is definitely underwhelming, especially with the reports that a month ago that he could have gotten a first-round pick. I wasn't quite sure if that was going to be the case, but having just a couple of mid-round picks is definitely a disappointment. At the same time, though, you got to consider the circumstances. Ottawa signed him as a free agent this offseason, so just for that, they get a third and potentially another third on top of that. And also the fact that he had a full no-move clause, which he could pretty much go wherever he wanted to. That leverage was strong in Tarasenko's case. And even though we heard a few teams that he might have wanted to go to, it really seemed like Florida was the destination that he wanted to end up in. I mean, why the heck wouldn't you? Amazing situation, amazing team, amazing place to live. Tarasenko, it's a no-brainer for him to want to go there. And it seems like he wanted Florida or bust. And considering that situation, it's pretty obvious why Ottawa didn't get a great deal here. The leverage just wasn't there. And hey, they signed him as a free agent. They get a couple mid-round picks. It's not the end of the world. And you also consider the fact what the Blues were able to get for Tarasenko at last year's deadline. For Tarasenko and Mikko Nicola, they got Blais, they got a 4th-round pick, and a 1st-rounder as well, which ended up becoming Theo Lindstein, and of course, a potential middle pair D in the future. Considering that, obviously, it sucks for Ottawa to only get a 3rd and maybe a 3rd in the future. But again, you got to consider the circumstances here. You also got to consider the ages as well, and just the trade market too. And even though I think Florida definitely fleeced here, I think they definitely robbed Ottawa, there's a reason why Ottawa got robbed, and they were probably going to get robbed no matter what. But considering Florida being the best team in the league, in my opinion, the team that had the best odds for the cup before Tarasenko, to me, he just adds on top of that. You already consider Florida's more grinding, more forward-checking style, but I think Tarasenko brings them something a little bit different, more of rush offense, more of a goal-scoring ability. I mean, in that top 6, it was not a huge hole, but it was definitely a hole that Florida could fix, and with Tarasenko, he will fix that for sure, bringing in some clutch goals in the playoffs and likely aiding to Florida's Stanley Cup win this summer. As for the trade grades and who I think wins this deal, to me, I'm going to give Florida a straight A. Considering what they had to give up, it is a no-brainer to acquire Tarasenko and who he could be, what he can be in that locker room. For Ottawa, I think people are going to say this is a horrible failure of a trade, but I'm still going to give it a C. Again, you got to consider the leverage here, and you got to consider just how little of it Ottawa had in this situation. And even though I wanted to see the Sens re-sign Tarasenko, and I predicted that it would happen as such, it just seemed like the more and more Tarasenko was brought up, that the less likely that was going to be. Still, though, for Ottawa, all that matters is how they're able to develop who they pick, who they're able to draft. We've obviously seen the Sens over the past 2 years not having the best decisions in that department, especially after the first round. We'll see what they can do with maybe a new management there if that changes. But for Ottawa, we'll see what happens. Obviously, the result, the return is disappointing. But again, considering they got him for free in the first place, you can't really complain that much. But I want to know in the comments down below, what do you guys think of this huge Tarasenko trade? Do you think it is a steal for the Florida Panthers? Do you think the Sens did well? And how far do you see the Tarasenko-led Florida Panthers going in the playoffs this season. Let us know all your thoughts down below. Also, let us know who you think the Panthers might acquire as well on top of Tarasenko. They have the cap space to make a few moves, so let us know what you guys think they'll do after this. And of course, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell if you haven't already, and share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online. Of course, if you guys don't know, we'll be doing our trade deadline stream on Friday for the, I think, 2 hours before the deadline and after that as well. So we'll see you there for that. And I will see you in the next one. I hope you have a great hockey day, and goodbye.